All right, I said. I felt something electric slide down my spine. Our Lady is not some magical being out there somewhere, like a fairy godmother. She's not the statue in the parlor. She's something inside of you. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Our Lady is inside me, I repeated. Not sure I did. You have to find a mother inside yourself. We all do. Even if we already have a mother, we still have to find this part of ourselves inside. She held out her hand to me. Give me your hand. I lifted my left hand and placed it in hers. She took it and pressed the flat of my palm up against my chest over my beating heart. You don't have to put your hand on Mary's heart to get strength and consolation and rescue and all the other things we need to get through life, she said. You can place it right here on your own heart. Your own heart. August stepped closer. She kept the pressure steady against my hand. All those times your father treated you mean, Our Lady was the voice in you that said, no, I will not bow down to this. I am Lily Melissa Owens. I will not bow down. Whether you could hear this voice or not, she was in there saying it. I took my other hand and placed it on top of hers, and she moved her free hand on top of it so that we had this black and white stack of hands resting upon my chest. When you're unsure of yourself, she said, when you start pulling back into doubt and small living, she's the one inside saying, get up from there and live like the glorious girl you are. She's the power inside you. You understand? Her hands stayed where they were, but released their pressure. And whatever it is that keeps widening your heart, that's Mary too. Not only the power inside you, but the love. And when you get down to it, Lily, that's the only purpose grand enough for a human life. Not just to love, but to persist in love. She paused. Bees drummed their sound into the air. August retrieved her hands from the pile on my chest, but I left mine there. This Mary I'm talking about sits in your heart all day long, saying, Lily, you are my everlasting home. Don't you ever be afraid. I am enough. We are enough. I closed my eyes, and in the coolness of morning, there among the bees, I felt for one clear instant what she was talking about. When I opened my eyes, August was nowhere around. I looked back toward the house and saw her crossing the yard, her white dress catching the light. The knock on the door came at 2 p.m. I was sitting in the parlor writing in the new notebook Zach had left at my door, setting down everything that had happened to me since Mary Day. Words streamed out of me so fast I couldn't keep up with them, and that's all I was thinking about. I didn't pay attention to the knock. Later I would remember it didn't sound like an ordinary knock, more like a fist pounding. I kept writing, waiting for August to answer it. I was sure it was the man from Goose Creek with the new queen bee. The pounding came again. June had gone off with Neil. Rosaline was in the honey house washing a new shipment of mason jars, a job that belonged to me, but she'd volunteer for it, seeing how badly I needed to write everything out. I didn't know where August was. Probably in the honey house, helping Rosaline. I look back and wonder, how did I not guess who was there? The third time the knocking came, I got up and opened the door. T-Ray stared at me, clean-shaven, wearing a white short-sleeved shirt with chest hair curling from the neck, opening. He was smiling. Not a smile of sweet adoring, I hastened to say, but the fat grin of a man who has been rabbit hunting all day long and has just now found his prey backed up in a hollow log with no way out. He said, well, 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 look who's here. I had a sudden terror-stricken thought. He might that second drag me out to his truck and hightail it straight back to the peach farm, where I would never be heard from again. I stepped backward into the hallway, and with a forced politeness that surprised me and seemed to throw him off stride, I said, won't you come in? What else was I going to do? I turned and forced myself to walk calmly into the parlor. His boots clomped after me. All right, goddammit, he said, speaking to the back of my head. If you want to pretend I'm making a social visit, we'll pretend. But this ain't a social visit, you hear me? I spent half my summer looking for you, and I'm going to take you out of here nice and quiet, or kicking and screaming. Don't matter which to me. I motioned to a rocking chair. Have a seat if you want to. I was trying to look ho-hum, when inside I was close to full-blown panic. Where was August? My breath had turned into short, shallow puffs, a dog pant. He flopped into the rocker and pushed back and forth, that got-you-now grin glued on his face. So you've been here the whole time, staying with colored women. Jesus Christ. Without realizing it, I backed over to the statue of Our Lady. I stood, immobilized, while he looked over her. What the hell is that? A statue of Mary, I said. You know, Jesus' mother. My voice sounded skittish in my throat. Inside, I was racking my brain for something to do. Well, it looks like something from the junkyard, he said. How did you find me? Sliding up on the edge of the cane seat, he dug in his pants pocket until he brought up his knife, the one he used to clean his nails with. It was you who led me here, he said, puffed up and pleased as punched to share the news. I did no such thing. He took the blade out of the knife bed, pushed the point into the arm of the rocker, and carved out little chunks of wood, taking a sweet time to explain. Oh, you led me here, all right. Yesterday the phone bill came, and guess what I found on there? One collect call from a lawyer's office in Tiburon. Mr. Clayton Forrest. Big mistake, Lily, calling me collect. You went to Mr. Clayton's and he told you where I was? No, but he has an old lady secretary who was more than happy to fill me in, and she said I would find you right here. Stupid Miss Lacey. Where's Rosaline? He said. She took off a long time ago, I lied. He might kidnap me back to Sylvan, but there was no need for him to know where Rosaline was. I could spare her that much at least. He didn't comment on Rosaline, though. He seemed happy to carve up the arm of the rocking chair, like he was all of 11 years old, putting his initials in a tree. I think he was glad he didn't have to fool with her. I wondered how I would survive back in Sylvan without Rosaline. Suddenly he stopped rocking. The nauseating smile faded off his mouth. He was staring at my shoulder with his eyes squinted almost to the closed position. I looked down to see what had grabbed his attention and realized he was staring at the whale pin on my shirt. He got to his feet and walked over to me, deliberately stopping 4 or 5 feet away, like the pin had some kind of voodoo curse on it. Where did you get that? He said. My hand went up involuntarily and touched the little rhinestone spout. August gave it to me, the woman who lives here. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. She gave it to me. She said it belonged to... I was afraid to say it. He didn't know anything about August and my mother. His upper lip had gone white, the way it did when he was badly upset. I gave that pin to your mother on her 22nd birthday, he said. You tell me right now, how did this August woman get it? You gave this pin to my mother? You did? Answer me, damn it. This is where my mother came when she ran away from us. August said she was wearing it the day she got here. He walked back to the rocker, shaken looking, and eased down onto the seat. I'll be goddamned, he said, so low I could hardly hear him. August used to take care of her back when she was a little girl in Virginia, I said, trying to explain. He stared into the air, into nothing. Through the window, out there in the Carolina summer, I could see the sun beating down on the roof of his truck, lighting up the tips of the picket fence that had all but disappeared under the jasmine. The truck was spattered with mud, like he had been trolling the swamps looking for me. I should have known, he said, shaking his head, talking like I wasn't in the room. I looked for her everywhere I could think, and she was right here. Jesus Christ, she was right here. The thought seemed to awe him. He shook his head and looked around as if thinking, I bet she sat in this chair. I bet she walked on this rug. His chin quivered slightly, and for the first time it hit me how much he must have loved her, how it had split him open when she left. Before coming here, my whole life had been nothing but a hole where my mother should have been, and this hole had made me different, left me always aching for something, but never once did I think that what he'd lost or how it might have changed him. I thought about August's words. People can start out one way, and by the time life gets through with them, they end up completely different. I don't doubt he started off loving your mother. In fact, I think he worshipped her. I had never known T-Ray to worship anyone except Snout, the dog love of his life. But seeing him now, I knew he loved Deborah Fontenot. And when she left him, he sunk into bitterness. He jabbed the knife into the wood and got to his feet. I looked at the handle sticking in the air, then at T-Ray as he walked around the room touching things, the piano, the hat rack, a Look magazine on the drop-leaf table. "Looks like you're here by yourself," he said. I could feel it coming. The end of everything. He walked straight toward me and reached for my arm. When I jerked away, he brought his hand across my face. T-Ray had slapped me lots of times before, clean, sharp smacks on the cheek, the kind that cause you to draw a quick, stunned breath, but this was something else. Not a slap at all. This time he hit me full force. I heard the grunt of exertion escape his lips as the blow landed, seen the momentary bulge in his eyes, and I'd smelled the farm on his hand, smelling peaches. The impact threw me backward into Our Lady. She crashed onto the floor a second before I did. I didn't feel the pain at first, but sitting up, gathering my feet under me, it lashed from my ear down to my chin. It caused me to drop back again onto the floor. I stared up at him with my hands clutched at my chest, wondering if he would pull me by my feet outside to his truck. He was shouting, "How dare you leave me? You need a lesson is what you need." I filled my lungs with air, tried to steady myself. Black Mary lay beside me on the floor. I remembered how we smoothed it into her, every little crack and grain, till she was honey-logged and satisfied. I lay there afraid to move, aware of the knife stuck in the arm of the chair across the room. He kicked at me, his boot landing in my calf like I was a tin can in the road that he might as well kick because it was there in front of him. He stood over me. "Deborah," I heard him mumble, "you're not leaving me again." His eyes looked frantic, scared. I wondered if I'd heard him right. I noticed my hands still cupped over my chest. I pressed them down, hard into the flesh. "Get up," he yelled. "I'm taking you home." He hit me by the arm in one swoop, lifting me up. Once on my feet, I wrenched away and ran for the door. He came after me and caught me by the hair. Twisting to face him, I saw that he had the knife. He waved it in front of my face. "You're going back with me," he yelled. "You never should have left me." It crossed my mind that he was no longer talking to me, but to Deborah, like his mind had snapped back 10 years. "T-Ray," I said. "It's me, Lily." He didn't hear me. He had a fistful of my hair and wouldn't let go. "Deborah," he said. "Goddamn bitch," he said. He seemed crazy with anguish, relieving a pain he'd kept locked up all this time, and now that it was loose, it had overwhelmed him. I wondered how far he'd go to try and take Deborah back. For all I knew, he might kill her. "I am your everlasting home. I am enough. We are enough." I looked into his eyes. They were full of a strange fogginess. "Daddy," I said. I shouted it. "Daddy!" He looked startled, then stared at me, breathing hard. He turned to loose my hair and dropped the knife on the rug. I stumbled backward and caught myself. I heard myself panting. The sound filled up the room. I didn't want him to see me look down at the knife, but I couldn't help myself. I glanced over where it was. When I looked back at him, he was still staring at me.